we're gonna start this, but it's whatever. We do have like a set of questions that we can sort of refer to, but we've just been keeping it casual, just having conversations and just seeing where it takes us. That's more important than like trying to play the video and play the audio, whatever. Sure. So to start, can you just like describe yourself, like how you got here, a little background?
Yeah, how I got here. So I mean, it's funny. When I was in your position, I never thought I'd be living in New York. I kind of had no idea what I wanted to do. I always really liked school. I loved McDonogh. I had a wonderful experience. You guys are RLs? Yeah. I was an RL, and sort of the camaraderie of that experience just was amazing. I went to college. I'm actually a triplet, and I wound up going to school with my sisters. And again, I just loved being in that academic environment. I always loved history. I liked math. Like I just loved a ton of different things. I did drama. So I always had these likes, but I still, in some ways, am just very curious about learning. And I'm currently a lawyer, but how I got there was sort of a winding path. I mean, I did drama for years. I loved to read, and I sort of thought I'd become a lawyer at some point. But a lot of what I did at McDonogh was just trying to make sure I was developing interests outside of just school. And so I played sports. I just did like any number of things. And I think as I was in college and thinking about what was really interesting to me, it was hard because I just liked all these things. I liked arts. I liked giving back to the community. I was always doing community service. I don't know if you guys still do it at McDonogh, but Katrina hit my senior year, and so that was when the connection with one of the schools down there started. And so I'd done that as a senior. That was my senior project. Was I went and volunteered and helped clean up homes in New Orleans. And so I don't know. As I was growing up, I felt myself being pulled in a bunch of different ways. And so when I was in college, I took business classes. I took history classes. I took computer science class just to like learn what that was about, and that didn't lead me any closer to sort of like figuring it out. Because again, I was just always curious, and so after college, I actually did Teach for America, and I think a lot of that sort of ties back to my McDonogh experience because, as you all know, like giving back is a huge part of that community. It's not enough to just show up. Like you really need to give more than you've received, and so I did TFA, and I actually did it in New Orleans. Like that was the only place I wanted to do it. I'd gone back year after year, even after leaving McDonogh, to go down to New Orleans and be in that community. And so I loved it. And I actually could have stayed to teach for forever. But I was doing that for a couple of years, and I was like, yeah, I don't know. Like I don't know. So I went to law school, and again, I just really loved it. I didn't think I'd be any good at it. I don't know why, but like I just loved reading and like figuring out the cases. And I started law school actually in New Orleans, and then I transferred to Harvard. And that's like one thing led to another, and here I am in my job currently. But I think, notwithstanding the fact that I was also up till 2 a.m. doing my job, like, and that it's very demanding, I think that's like the least interesting part about my life. I've really tried to continue hobbies. I picked up actually doing pottery while I was a lawyer because I just needed something to do with my hands that like wasn't sitting at a computer all day long. I still volunteer. I'm the chair of a nonprofit here, chair of the board. So I still try and have like a very enriched life. I have lots of nieces and nephews at this point, so like that's a huge part of my life, which is something you guys will maybe experience in a decade. But so I guess that is like a long way of saying that's who I am.
That's awesome. I guess one thing I wanted to focus on more was the service aspect.
Yeah.
Do you think that was something that was kind of fostered by your time at McDonogh?
Oh, for sure. I mean, I think at least out of my friends growing up, we were one of the unique schools that really had an emphasis on giving back to the community, and that always resonated with me. I always felt so incredibly lucky to just have been born into the family I was born into, to be at McDonogh, it just opened so many doors, and so that was always something that was so important to me. And it was certainly something that was fostered at McDonogh. I mean, I can't remember a year going by where we didn't do some sort of community service. And I think that was a huge reason why I did Teach for America after college, was I just wanted to get back and do something before sort of picking a career and launching into that.
That's cool.
So did all three of the triplets go to McDonogh?
All three of the triplets and my older sister went to McDonogh.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so my question would be like, when you guys ended up splitting up,
Yeah.
kind of taking your own path, what was that like, and how did you like have to like learn to like distinguish yourself, I guess?
Yeah. So that's a great question. I think McDonogh in a lot of ways helped us sort of forge our own paths.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was easy for people to just see us and say, oh, like they're the triplets, but I think the three of us are very different. And because McDonogh had so many different programs and things, like we could all sort of pick our own thing. Deb was a dancer, so she was all in on that. Jossie ran cross country and was in the choir. I was in band and did my own thing. And then we all just sort of had our outlets at school. And I think the only class Deb and I definitely had English with Mr. Van together and history with Mr. Wood. But those were, I think, the only two classes that we overlapped. Jossie and Deb might have had a class or two together, but it was very, like, we could do our own thing. I actually think that going to college was the harder separation. So Jossie started at College of Charleston and Deb and I started at BU. And I don't know if you know BU's campus. I guess you guys, did you go to Boston? Yeah. Deb and I started on like polar opposite ends of campus. And we then lived together our sophomore year, and Jossie transferred our sophomore year. I think, I don't know. I mean, I think we were very fortunate to be at McDonogh in an environment where like we could all do our own thing, and there were so many outlets. But at the end of the day, we had to leave to come back together. We're still exceptionally close. Jossie and I lived a block away from each other here for a long time. And Deb was here too. She's now back in Baltimore with her husband and kids, or soon to be kids. So, I don't know if I've done a great job answering your question, but I think McDonogh was definitely helpful. And then as we sort of had to separate and just to come back together. Yeah.
No, I was thinking like I have one brother, and I think that's a lot to handle. So I can imagine having triplets. I'm sure you get that a lot. Though,
yeah,
so.
I mean it's a different dynamic, right? I mean you have built-in best friends, so there was always someone going through what I was going through at the same time, even if we were fighting or like totally different. And for a long time, I think the three of us were very different, but now it's so much more complementary. Like those differences are our strengths, and we can just sort of call each other out on the bullshit and move on. Like that's just sort of how we operate. Yeah.
Nice.
Will you describe the type of law you practice and how you've sort of grown through that position after school?
So I am a general litigator. So like when you think of what a lawyer does, that's most days what I'm supposed to be doing. So I represent clients. I either file a litigation on their behalf, or I'm defending them once they've been sued. So and my practice really runs the gamut. I think that's part of one of the things that sort of drew me to what I was doing was I get to, all my clients are different. Like I could represent a dental company or a bank or an individual, or you name a construction company. Like it really runs the gamut, and I think that is what's really interesting. Is like I just get to learn new things about new industries all the time. I think how I fell into that was a lot of like the pieces I was picking up, even starting at McDonogh with the drama program. Like I very much view what I do on a daily basis at times as like you're putting on a performance. If you have a client meeting or you have to go to court to argue a motion or fill in the blank, like it is very much let me put on the best foot forward, even if I'm having a terrible day. I went to bed at 2 a.m, got 2 hours of sleep, right? Like you put on a show. And I think that sort of started with my drama experience. It certainly carried through with my teaching experience, where every day was really an emotional and physical roller coaster, especially where I was teaching. And it was very much like, oh, I have 34 students and 10 of them are angry today, or just like doing whatever, or they're just going off, and you really just have to pull it together and put on a show. So that's sort of like the drama, I guess, of the law really resonated with me. And then I just always loved to read and write, and so that was really a good synergy for me. There are corporate lawyers who don't ever get into a courtroom. They do much more like contract-based work, or they're developing, investment funds or things like that, and they're really laying the paperwork for that. That's really not what I do. Mine is much more, I think, more traditionally what you think of when you think of a lawyer.
So, do you think like the curiosity that you mentioned in college, like taking a wide breadth of different courses, do you think that's helped you in, I guess, being a lawyer specifically?
Yeah, for sure. I would say that, there are very few like classes I have taken in my life that have been like necessary to be a lawyer. I think the most necessary things have been to just be like intellectually curious and to work hard and to really just try and dive deep and figure out what you're learning. I think that has been the most important thing I've taken away. And I think that's a lot of why it took me a long time, I think, to land in being a lawyer, and we'll see, who knows where this goes. But I was just so curious and just wanted to keep learning, and it was hard for me to just like pick a thing and say, yes, I want to be a doctor, or like, this is what's inspiring me to do this. I think it was finding a career that allowed me to really just pick things that I found interesting.
So is like intellectual growth like something that like fuels you on a daily basis, like outside of being a lawyer, just like personally?
Yeah.
Like growing your, intellectual base of knowledge?
Yeah, I think it's not necessarily like intellectual based. It's more just like doing things that make me happy, like bring me joy, or just make things a little more interesting. I think, as I said at the beginning, like being a lawyer is probably the least interesting thing about me. I am very proud and like work hard and always want to put my best foot forward at work, but I think just being sort of tapped into things that bring me joy, like I'm a huge sports fan, so making sure, I watch whoever, like I'm a diehard Ravens fan. It's hard to be a diehard Orioles fan. But like recently, for whatever reason, I took the MLB like agent certification test and like passed that. Like that's not like a brag. It's just like, oh, like why not? I'm a lawyer. Like I should be able to pass this, so I did it. So just I don't know. I think I don't like the idea of just like waking up and going through the motions of like a 9 to 5. Like I want to be able to like do things outside of my job that at least keep things interesting to me.
So, as three guys potentially looking at becoming lawyers in the future, what is, we talked about your favorite part, like the diversity of what you get to do, the reading and writing. What is something you might want to change about your job or that you don't like?
Obviously at times the hours are very long, and so that is not that fun. I don't know. I think it's been a great profession for me, but it's not great for everyone, and I think it at times can be like a very difficult profession to break into if you haven't had a lot of exposure to it, I think. Even as like a woman in my profession, at times it's been difficult to be like the only female on my team. I think people get very set in their ways, and first impressions matter, and I just think sometimes it's sort of hard to break into, if that makes sense. I think there are like it's no mystery that there are a lot of people go into law and like don't like it, and that's fair. I think it can be a very demanding job, at times unreasonably so, when like I do civil work. I'm not defending someone who's about to go to jail or who has just committed a crime, although I can do that in my pro bono practice, but at times you're just dealing with like unreasonable expectations for things that you're kind of like, this doesn't matter, like can we take a deep breath? So I think that is definitely one thing. Something else I probably want to change, just to sort of like, I think like everyone at times needs to take a deep breath and just be like, let's put this in perspective.
Right.
Yeah.
You seem to manage like your job, and you mentioned it's very demanding with like the family, like having nephews and nieces. Like love for sports, like pottery. How do you manage like all of that, like with your profession?
It's hard. It takes practice for sure, and there are times when I don't manage it, where it's like and we're coming out of a pandemic where it was like Fridays didn't matter, like you weren't able to leave your house, so everyone was like, oh, you're just home, like respond to my email, do this. It doesn't matter what time of day or night it is. So that was definitely hard. I mean, it definitely ebbs and flows, but I think with anything that you value, like it does take some work, and so I've had to carve out space and time to be like, Monday nights are my time, like I'm going to my pottery class. If I absolutely have to miss it, I will, but like the associates who work for me know that like if I'm not responding between 6 and 9, it's because my hands are in clay. So I think doing things like that, as I've gotten older, that's gotten easier, but I think it's also just because I've made it a priority. Am I perfect at that? No. Should I work out more every week? Absolutely. But like, so there are things that give and take, and it's not always perfect. But I think it's like anything that's important to me. Like it's something I try and prioritize and like carve out time for. And it certainly has gotten easier as I've gotten a little more senior. I would say as a junior associate, I wouldn't have signed up for a pottery class, but I've sort of earned my right to like step away for a little bit, and so I think finding even if it's not a pottery class, when you're a junior, a lawyer, it's making sure if working out keeps you sane, like doing that, getting up maybe 20 minutes earlier in the morning to do that, even if it means you're going to be a little bit more tired, if that makes you happy, like it's important to carve that out.
And what do you think the most important skills are for someone who's like a lawyer or like working with clients?
So, I mean, I have never been the smartest person in any room I've walked into. So I don't think that's what it takes. I think it takes, you have to be hardworking for sure. I've always sort of approached the job with like an incredible sense of humility, and some of that was like Teach for America, where it was like day one I had to own my classroom, but I had literally no idea what I was doing. And so it's just asking a ton of questions, showing up, if you have a call with a partner, it's making sure you're in their office for that. It's like really just putting in the time and energy to just try and soak up everything. I think a lot of it is attention to detail, which is not something that was really innate to me. Like it really had to be beaten into me. There's still times where I'm like, oh, that was a very obvious error. Like, how did I miss that? But getting a markup of something and just sort of trying to soak in, okay, what are the things that are changing? Oh, he's consistently changing like the font, the style of a parentheses or whatever it is. Like just making sure you're picking up on all those little details. Is really key. And then I think just I think you have to really like to like read and write, or at least for what I do. I think you could be a corporate lawyer and never want to read or write. Like you just have to write contracts, and so perhaps like you really need to have a command of how to use a comma. Like that's like a very different skill set than what I have for sure. So I think for what I do, it's really like being attention to detail, hardworking, like really willing to dive into the facts and just remaining, I think, like really curious and trying to just sort of push the limits of what you're reading and seeing. Not necessarily push the limits in a bad way, but really just maybe getting creative at times when some of the arguments don't necessarily seem favorable to you.
Have there been any hurdles that you've encountered and gotten over, or sort of twofold? Do you foreshadow any hurdles, either professionally or personally, in the future of your life that you think you're going to have to, overcome?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are no like blemish-free careers, and I think some of my biggest hurdles have been like the best learning experiences. Like you guys are going to be, or you're assuming going to college next year. Like that was a horrible process for me. My mom labeled me the queen of rejection. Maybe don't use that, but I obviously BU is a wonderful school, but like I really did not get in to any of my top choices, and like at the time it was exceptionally devastating. But it BU was an amazing experience for me, and it became what I made of it, and I think that's really true of anything. There have been jobs and cases or things where I've like screwed up, and it's exceptionally hard in the moment. But those have been some of the best learning experiences. You know, you just use those things to be like, all right, I'm never doing that mistake again, and like it's sort of like seared in your mind. I think, you know, I'm always sort of thinking about what do I want to do long term, and I still truly don't have any idea. Like, I'm very happy in my current job, but like there's a potential, like, do I want to be doing the same thing, you know, day in and day out, doing this lifestyle long term? I don't know. So that's sort of a hurdle, is just really starting to figure out more of like, okay, now that I have a foundation in the law, like what do I want to do? What really makes me happy? And I think I'm very much struggling with that at times. You know, I sort of thought at this point I would have it all figured out, and I don't. But I think, you know, there's always going to be hurdles, and things that when you start at, you just think, oh my God, I'm totally terrible at this, like I need to throw the towel in, and it sucks to sort of just like wake up the next day and keep going, but I think those are the best learning experiences for sure.
I want to shift gears a tiny bit and just, so one of the things we've found that in all the interviews that we've done so far has been really strong is that like the McDonogh community, especially in their professions, has been really profound, and that people have been able to connect on a really deep level with other alums when they've met them. I was wondering, I guess, have you come across any other alumni, whether it be from your class or earlier or older or younger classes, that you've been able to connect with and maybe have even helped you professionally or personally?
Yeah, I mean, I would say I'm probably not the poster child for this because I've not done a good job of connecting with McDonogh alumni. Besides, you know, people I just remained close with in my class. There are certainly like a number of lawyers, but like there were twins in my class, the Schultzes, who like also lived 2 blocks away from me, and so and like I know that him very well. He was a doctor here, and now he's back in Baltimore. So there are definitely connections. I've gone to a couple events here. The Ravens GC, what's his, Brandon Etheridge?
I'm not sure.
Anyways, don't use any of this, but so he was at an event, and I talked to him. He was at a law firm before he transitioned to going to the Ravens, and so just talking to him about his experience at a law firm was certainly helpful. I think given that my sisters are McDonogh alums, like that's always sort of been my connection. My parents are like very connected to the school. One of my nephews is a first grader there, so nice. I've definitely stayed connected. My parents were at McDonogh last night and called me, and Dr. Costa was saying hello, and like he couldn't hear me at all, but he's like, I heard you bought a house, and I'm like, yeah.
Love that guy.
Yeah, he's the best. He's the best. So I mean, McDonogh has definitely been formative. I think when I was going through like TFA to law school, I was definitely relying on that network a lot more just to sort of get guidance. I mean, even Anita Hilson, I don't think is there anymore. She was in development, and my sister, who's still here, is also a lawyer, and she happened to have worked at my sister's firm, 40 years ago. So it's definitely a community. It's one that like I talk about all the time. Have I done like a great job of tapping into it here? Definitely not. But it's definitely remained like a big part of my life. Yeah.
And then could you talk about maybe some of the challenges in the transition periods of your life, like from maybe McDonogh to BU or BU to TFA?
Yeah.
Or any of those kind of challenges or difficulty that you faced?
Yeah, I mean, I am not someone who handles change well, and so actually going to college, I mean, each of those inflection points was difficult for their own reasons, right? Like, I think going to college is so exciting because you're sort of opening up this whole world of independence that you haven't experienced, but it's bittersweet because I was leaving a community I absolutely loved. I was separating from my sisters who, like, I at times very much wanted to be independent from, but it was still like a very difficult transition, and it took me, I think, like a month at college to finally get comfortable, just like being there and sort of getting it. I think the biggest part the hardest part for me of going to college was not having that routine of like not waking up every day and like having my clothes already picked out, and like, you know, as much as you hate the uniform, like it's kind of nice to just not think about it. Having to figure out like getting my own meals and just like not having a social network of people that I'd been with for so long. I mean, I started at McDonogh in 5th grade, and so it was like, oh, I have to make new friends. I don't know my sisters. So I think that transition really like took me a month to sort of find my feet. I think some people jump right into the social aspect of college and were like, oh great, like let me just go to a party and meet people and make friends. And there's definitely that, but I think that was a little more difficult for me. And then like a month in, I was like, okay, I can do this. This is a lot of fun. I'm like loving this. And then like dead, sort of all of a sudden, it's like, oh, now I'm having my moment where I miss home, and this transition is difficult. So I think that was really hard. And then, you know, I think anytime I transitioned to a new job or a new experience, moving to New Orleans from Boston, again, was like, oh, I'm now leaving my sisters again. I'm leaving my community that's familiar. I now have to do a job where I'm not sure I'm going to be very good at it. Like, how do I make sure that I can do this? Am I going to disappoint myself? Am I going to disappoint my students? And so I think there were a lot of similar, like, emotional, you know, challenges of getting used to being in a new environment, doing something totally new, where now this was really my first job. And so it was like, how do I make sure that I do the best that I can, knowing that I still don't know very much about this. So I think that was another challenge. And then going back to law school and starting a new job, I think I've never really, those doubts don't really change or leave you. I think you just get better at being like, okay, I've done this once, like I can do it again. I have confidence in myself that, you know, no matter what, I'm gonna work hard and like find a way to make it work. And if it doesn't work, I can change those circumstances. So, you know, I think you guys also have like a very exciting experience coming up, but it's going to be different. And I think you just sort of have to have confidence in relying on your past experiences and knowing that you have such a great foundation, especially coming from McDonogh. And yeah, you know, you'll be able to find your way. I have no doubt.
Thank you.
Yeah.
What goals do you have for your future?
I mean, is retiring at 50 like a good goal? I don't know. I mean, I think I don't know. I would like to, no matter what I'm doing, like continue to make sure I'm giving back in the communities I'm in, whether that's, you know, continuing to be on a nonprofit board, maybe it's going to work at a nonprofit. I want to make sure that like whatever sort of life I'm living is one where I'm not just working, I'm doing a whole bunch of other things than just work, because that's always been very important to me. Probably a big goal is to work less than what I'm doing. I don't know. I think, you know, I'm always trying to find new things or like making sure I'm learning new things, and so I think that's definitely going to continue. I don't know. Yeah.
Should we do advice?
Yeah.
Advice.
So at the end of
Yeah.
each interview, we open up the floor to advice, like Jake said, and yeah, just like any final remarks that you want to make to us,
Yeah.
to us three, or you know, the graduating class of this year and the next. So whatever you think.
I mean, I think my biggest advice is, you know, make sure you're always showing up for yourself, and to me that means, you know, working hard, making sure that I'm not taking anything for granted, you know, approaching things with humility, I think is huge. You know, I, on a daily basis, just sort of see things where I'm like, oh my God, this person doesn't know what they're doing, but they're just so arrogant, and, you know, that's obviously not my style, but I think, you know, people who are, you know, honest and hardworking and willing to be team players and just like show up for themselves and other people earn the respect of everyone around them. They're certainly the people I gravitate towards, and I think they're the people that I've seen, especially in my profession, last the longest. You know, I've been doing this 8 years, but like if a binder has to get made, like I'm doing it because it has to get done. And so I think be those kind of people, right? Like, and I think that's a lot of what I've learned at McDonogh is, you know, giving more than you're taking, making sure that, that you can be proud of like who you're presenting or not necessarily who you're presenting, but you can be proud of the work you're putting forth, and that doesn't necessarily mean that it's in a job, right? It could be, making sure you're showing up for your teammates on a recreational baseball team in college, or, if a friend is down and out and like needs help, like you're showing up for them. All of those things are important, and I most likely can't remember the grades I got or the tests I took or the cases I'm on, but like I remember the people I worked with, and I remember who I could rely on and who showed up and gave just as much effort as I did. And all of those things are far more important to me than like some accolade or title you're gonna get.
Awesome.
Well, thank you so much for your time.
Thank
It was awesome.
you.
Yeah.
Great.
Stop the video.